Welcome to day 3 of the Business Excellence Leaders Program. Day 3, we're going to be spending time mainly going back through and applying what we did in the previous 2 days onto the results type items as opposed to the process type items. So relatively few slides in here, a whole lot of table work going on today. So the instructor overview for the day should be relatively short. Again, most of what's going to be going on here is going to be table work. So session 9, again, we're going back through and we're following through the same process steps that we did for process items, only now we're just doing it for results items. So you as an instructor should review enough to know where the differences show up. That's pretty much what you're going to be doing. You're putting them back into the same kind of table work, only now they're doing it on results items. This is giving them practice. It's kind of reinforcing what they've already learned in the previous days as well. So it's serving both to help even to move forward on the process items as well, just because it's giving them practice. So step 3, read the application. What are they looking for here in the results areas? This is now pulling back the material that we would have had them doing as homework on the previous night and starting to share that with their team and coming up with some kind of beginning consensus of what they're seeing based upon that. So that's what this table exercise is. Then on to the step 4 of identifying strengths and opportunities for improvement. Again, a review of what those things mean is in the context of results items. And then we give them plenty of examples of what those are. Put into the NERD format. So we start with the NERD format, including showing where the LeTCI dimensions show up over on the right-hand side. You'll see that the little yeses are showing up in this. It's a reiteration of the NERD activity from the previous days, but now they're getting a chance to see how things might show up in response to results items. Now we put them back in their tables and we ask them to go through and do the same thing they were doing before, only now for results. So again, a lot of table work, a lot of bonding at the table side. And that's kind of what goes in the morning, in the first part of the morning session. Then we move on in session 10 to the step 5 of estimating what the scoring range would be. This is going back, understanding what the NERD areas are, but really kind of getting deeply into the LeTCI matrix. So what we're saying in this case is when we are asking them to look at the LeTCI matrix, we want them to look at the whole item. So it's an important thing that they are not getting into too much detail when they're doing examples in the same kind of thing as we did with the ADLI matrix. Now we're providing them with our summary version of the scoring sheet for the results areas and highlighting the idea of basic, overall, multiple, but also on the integration thing we're using the words of the few, many, most areas as well. Okay, now we go back and we're seeing examples of where people have been putting in their NERD comments, only now we're highlighting it so that people can see which portions of those NERD comments might be associated with levels, which with trends, which with comparators, and which with integration. And this is giving people the idea that there's usually multiple components of those things in any given observation. Again, many examples. In this case, these are coming from the Collin Technologies case. And we want to give them plenty of opportunity to look at these things, kind of talking in the class about the relevance of what these things are and see whether these examples look like what they themselves might have been writing from the work that they had been doing in the Collin Technologies case. Remember that they had done that as an individual assessment and then also had gotten together as a table in their particular areas as well. The one that we're seeing here on is the enablers and stoppers piece. This is where you'd start to explain the idea of when they do decide where they're going to recommend a scoring band in the L, the T, the C, and the I. They want to be able to support why is it that they chose to go in that scoring band. Usually that implies both the kind of comments that they were finding that seem to resonate with the description of that particular scoring band they're recommending, but then also as to whether they might have moved it up or down, usually up. You tend to want them to have what we refer to as the stoppers, which is, what's a description of something that you found in the application that would imply that they're not in that higher level band. And so that's where, in this case, you'll see that there's comment material brought forward in red that says, here's why this would not have moved up into that particular band. Do note that although we're showing this as everything being in the 30 to 45 and then the stoppers are in the 50 to 65, in practice, make sure they understand that any given scoring dimension may be recommended at a different level, and so it's not necessarily going to always be it'll look a little bit more sawtooth than what you see in this particular graphic. Okay, then we go into giving people the idea when they look at the results areas, how do they, what might you see as a determination between different applicants? And so this is basically just giving 4 examples of applicants who give relatively little that's not very explanatory, which is this version 1, and that they're giving results that really do not have a lot of importance to the company, but it's almost where they're filling space perhaps. And then we move on beyond that, moving beyond the basic requirements. We're getting more and more of the areas of importance. We're seeing it as key things. They're putting in more information that is useful for being able to do the assessment of the results, and they're doing well enough against that information like competitors and benchmarks, that type of thing. So again, you can kind of go and have the conversation with the class that compares the version 1, 2, 3, and then finally 4, where everything that's being presented is relevant and important, and that there's enough information being presented there that it is likely going down into the appropriate segmented areas, which is where we talk about the multiple requirements things, and that the components of whatever they're giving us gives us enough information about comparators, averages, benchmarks, their own area that we can make valid conclusions about the results being presented. Okay, that's about where you would do a lunch break, and then we come back for more of the same. Right after lunch, we go into a film, and that gets them kind of started again, and then put them back on the tables again. And now we're going through with the score development at the table. Again, this should be familiar to them because of the fact that we're doing this already for process items. Okay, then we start to have the conversation with them about step 6, which is taking all that material they've done and putting it into formats that are more appropriate for the consumption of the applicant, which is feedback-ready comments. Again, very similar material to what we've already done with the process guidelines, only now we present them with the slides where they can look at both the nerd-style version of this and what that would have turned into as a feedback-ready comment. Do that for strengths, opportunities for improvement, and then put them back into their tables again and have them work on creating some feedback-ready comments in both the strength and the OFI areas. Okay, then at this point we move on to the step 7, which is preparing the material for the site visit. So it's clarifying and verifying what the site visit issues would be. Same kind of overview as we've done in the process items. And then finally, we're at the end of the day, we go through and do a recap of what they've picked up in the results assessment, overview, and then, of course, always leave yourself open for conversations about how that might relate to what they were doing in the process assessment as well. And then we move on into the end of day activity of putting the 2 most important messages on a post-it and putting them on the wall, and then you distribute the quizzes, quiz number 1, and they get to work on that. And that's all they need to do for the end of the day, and then they get to go home. And so that would be the end of day 3. Thank you very much.